Most of us dream of traveling to different parts of the world. It's a dream come true. But what if the trip you dreamed of ends in tragedy? In today's movie synopsis, a group of friends face a catastrophic plane crash. Let's witness how they survived this tragedy. Renan wakes up from a nightmare and realizes that it is already morning. He changes breakfast while listening to the announcement and reading the newspaper. Decided it was time to go out. At the airport, two men, Guy and Z, are chatting near the exit. They are waiting for the girlfriend of Reg, Ava. The unexpected arrival, along with the bodyguard of Ms. Randolph's family, dragged his belongings. Reg is surprised when Ava reveals that Brandon will be on the trip with them. Make her apologize. Kai talks to Brandon and reminds him that any situation can lead to violence. At the same time, happily pointing at some passengers in the airport meanwhile. And continue the conversation with Zing. He explained to Java that her family should not be involved in everything. She reassured the killer that they would only see Brandon from behind, because he was always with them. Well, and then Hunter and Brandon handed the phone to Ava because her father wanted to check on her. McCarthy and their distant niece were at the airport packing their things, while Martin told Joseph that the older she gets, the more beautiful she looks like her mother as they passed through the airport. Martin said that she would take care of her own affairs for a while to make the distant bride curious about her destination. The two grandchildren went first, while McCarty went the other way. Keep going. An airport employee also recognizes Eva as the daughter of a departing governor, and the vegetables are away and have a deep conversation, accidentally dropping her teddy bear. At the same time, Ava kills and Kai passes by and talks about Ava's law school and the job she doesn't really like. YouTube asked Avakov what he had learned about himself, and Ava replied that they were on vacation to relax and forget about them, not to participate in the interrogation. Meanwhile, Rosa rushes to find the lost teddy bear in her pocket, and in a hurry, she bumps into Ava. Causing Ava's coffee cup to spill on her body made Ava scold her for a long time. Frightened, Rosa ran towards Han to find comfort. Ava realizes her reaction is too harsh, feels guilty, and decides to search for the teddy bear herself. A deep smile appeared on his face again as Ava handed over the teddy bear that had been found. Ava then approaches Breakdown and reminisces about their childhood. She expressed her gratitude that Breakdown continues to accompany her. Although the cop has matured on the plane, Danilo flight attendants greet everyone before going inside. Upon entering, Brandon informs Ava that they have passed through her seat. However, Ava explained that they would be seated separately because they boarded the plane from the back of takeoff. Danilo presented the safety procedure when the police teased him Ava and asked him to stop. Then, when Kay asks for a Danilo drink, pretends to pour it on him in retaliation. Make my boy smile with satisfaction when he passes by in the meantime. Rosa and her grandparents had fun playing and had a great time during the flight. Ava noticed that there weren't many passengers on the plane, and Kai joked that the plane was old, so no one wanted to take the risk. JPEG explained that not many people booked tickets on this date. Kai teased that the plane's wings seemed fragile, and soon the birds flew into the jet engines, causing instability for the plane. The waiter reassured everyone that everything would be fine. When the bride looked out the window, she noticed that the jet engine began to play slowly. Panicking, she quickly showed her grandmother the plane panicked, and everyone tightened their seatbelts. Suddenly, part of the jet engine hit one side of the aircraft, causing a tear. Passengers who did not wear seatbelts were sucked out of the plane due to the high pressure. Attempts to rescue some people have failed because they are pulled out by the strong pull of the pressure. A flight attendant is also caught up in the pull of gravity when trying to help a passenger. Brandon and Ava exchanged glances as the plane began to land. The plane plunged and fell into the sea, causing loss of life among passengers. Brandon was stabbed in the chest by a small piece of metal when he fell. He also broke his arm when it collided with the ground. After a while, the plane slowly sank into the sea. The middle part of the plane was filled with water, but the rear part was still floating on the water. Danilo walks in and asks if everyone is okay. Sitting down, Brandon suddenly appears from the middle of the plane, and Rosa Rindan quickly pulls a small piece of metal out of her chest, but unfortunately drowns and loses consciousness. Danilo immediately performed CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, successfully pushed the water out of her body and saved her life. They ask about Han, and Brandon sadly reports that he has died. Tears poured into the anxious Get, but the breakdown reassured and soothed. They asked them to stay in the safe compartment. Danilo said the pilot had announced over the radio before the plane crashed. Therefore, the authorities will soon know their situation when they hear this. He told Danilo that he had said the same thing, that they will be fine. Brandon immediately dismisses, saying that Danilo is right in case they run out of air in cabin. Ronald Dahl asks Danilo to find an oxygen cylinder, but if he doesn't find the cooler, he suggests that they take the oxygen cylinder of someone she sees. Among the passengers, Brandon quickly took action to get the oxygen tank before diving into the cool water to ask if he could bring her his hat. Brandon bravely dived into the water to grab the Onion's hat and bring up the oxygen tank. However, a shark suddenly attacked him through a hole attached to his hip. He wrestled with the shark. But luckily, he escapes and brings the oxygen tank and hat back to the Brandon group, warning Ava to stay away, apologize, and say goodbye to her. When Era saw a large wound on Brandon's hip, he told her to be strong before being pulled back into the water. Witnessing this made her panic. She also cried over the fate of the breakdown. McCarthy noticed that the group's morale had seriously declined, so she suggested that they wait and make a plan afterwards. They turned their attention to Kai's wounds, and because of the intense pain, he screamed as they straightened his broken bones. Meanwhile, a rescue helicopter was deployed to search for the location of the plane crash. The radio operator informed the rescue helicopter that they needed to step up the search because one of the passengers was the son of a governor. After a while, he hates talking to Ava and asks them to take action. But Ava says they should just wait for rescue if they don't want to end up like Brandon. Shortly afterwards, the plane weakened due to water pressure and water began to leak inside, suggesting again that it was not a good idea to just wait for rescue. But the team ignored him and continued to share stories of deceased relatives. Some people cry as they reminisce about memories with their loved ones. While chatting, they noticed that the water had turned red, realized that the sharks are eating the corpses of their relatives. Above, rescue helicopters continue to search for them. During the conversation, suddenly a shark hits them. Want to get inside? Danilo asked the group. They thought there was a lot of time left, and Eva suggested it might be about 3 to 4 hours. The plane makes a buzzing noise, but Danilo thinks it's nothing. Reg rolls his eyes, and when Danilo realizes, he says that he hates not believing him because he's just a jet flight attendant in response, that he has an engineering degree, and he says that this plane is much weaker than a submarine that is designed to operate in underwater conditions. He affirmed that at any time, the plane could break and water could spill, and soon after the lights in the plane went off as the plane continued to sink. They found themselves near the shore of an underwater mountain, and the slight movement of the plane off the edge could cause them to crash to the bottom of the ocean. Inside the plane, the equipment began to fail. With a new location, the tilt angle of the aircraft became steeper and noticed a dangerous situation. Eva suggested to herself that they had no choice but to try to swim up. Cold, with a worried look, asked how they were going to deal with the sharks. Strawberry Farr recalled what they learned in school about sharks and shared that sharks are afraid of gas. However, Haight says they won't be able to swim to the surface without air. They discuss solutions to the air problem, but no one can come up with a solution to keep people's spirits up. Evans said she will try to think of a way to swim up. Eva asked for permission to go to the bathroom, but in fact she just cried in it when looking at a photo of her with her mother. Meanwhile, the rescue helicopter continued to search and finally discovered the location of the accident. The two divers saw their plane next to an underwater mountain and noticed that the lights in the cockpit of the plane were still on. They swam closer, and the team continued to search for things that could help them swim up. Rosa asks if Avakov is afraid, and Ava quickly realized that the distant bride was starting to worry, so she approached and comforted her. She insists that they will be able to survive. After a while, two divers approached their location. They finally saw them, and the group was full of hope, while one of the divers signaled to them. They saw a shark pulling the diver down, and the group was once again in fear when they saw the diver's bloodied, severed leg. Two soldiers in the plane left because the plane ran out of gas, and they believed the divers had enough experience and could handle the situation. Meanwhile, inside the plane, Eva and her friends are brainstorming to find a way out of this situation. Evan thought of using the diving gas cylinder of one of the dead divers, and she dived into the flooded part of the plane to find the body. After rising up to Haight, did Eva find anything? Ava replied that she wasn't sure, so she continued diving to check. When she surfaced again, she announced that she had found something at the same time. Z accidentally fell into the water, but he still managed to swim. Nevertheless, a shark spotted him and began dragging him underwater. Eva and the others tried to investigate, but unfortunately the shark had bitten off one of his legs. Killing them all was painful, and the strawberries were instructed to stay behind the curtain. Warning not to go near water. Mac helps with leg amputation and first aid. Browsing asks Eva about the severity of the injury, and Eva says that the blood has stopped. Annoyed by the fact that he couldn't feel his leg and was told that he had lost his leg below his knee, get crying and laughing because of the incident, while the bride was led inside Danilo to stand up. Move the cabinets and open the rear compartment to give the flashlight to Ava. Ava said that to get out of here, you have to have diving equipment. Ava approached and dived down to find the equipment. Suddenly, an octopus appeared in front of her, came up with a bag of wetsuits, and noticed that there were only enough for the 4 tree people to observe ZE fading and asked the Avar to check. Ava talked to X and reminded me that wanted to go to my Alaska. She insisted that they would be there soon. Reed replied that Ava had always said that, But Ava insisted that this time it was true. And then apologize hate for leading you into this situation when talking to Z. And noticed something in the window, and suddenly they all heard a strange sound that made them look out the window. McCarthy checked Zed's circuit and apologized to Java. Ava wondered why Mac was walking back and forth, apologizing that she saw that the cold was no longer alive and tried to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, while drying. But Danilo stopped her, realized that there is nothing more that could be done. Eva cried and said that Jade wanted to help her, but he died for her. She said that hate always tries to be brave, but she herself could not be brave. McCarty covered Git's body with his coat, and the plane began to make louder noises as it continued to suffer damage. Eva checks on the situation and informs them that they need to leave here as soon as possible. Kai Zero V&E thought that they could not do anything at the moment because they might become food for sharks, and suggested using air bubbles as deep as said in the airbags to breathe. There are a lot of airbags, and all they need to do is take the dive protector. Ava noticed the guy was worried and asked, "Is he okay?" Kay struggled when recounting a haunting incident when he was taken to the swimming pool by his father. When diving deep, he got into trouble, and although he kept his breath, his father did not help him. Luckily, he emerged in time. Lhasa asked, "How long have you been holding your breath?" And Kai replied that it was 2 minutes. And Evan said that was enough and continued to collect the air bubbles to create air bubbles. Despite hearing the noise, they continued to prepare. Ava sees sharks through the window, but she ignores them and asks deeply about her dreams. Grosses have expressed his desire to become a veterinarian and asked Ava about her plans. Ava shared that she will be returning to university in October to complete her law studies and asked her friends about their plans. After escaping, and Danilo reveals his intention to marry his partner. He also advised Kai to choose carefully when in love. Kai said he had no plans, except if you're a lucky person. Danilo nodded and asked them to leave the area after they had finished their preparations. Eva approached the devoid body. Suddenly, they heard another noise and the plane began to move. The panic because they were sliding down. Ava tried to calm him down, but Kai was still worried. Ava looked out the window and assessed the plane situation, asking her what she saw, but Ava said she didn't see anything. Anyone who doubted and checked the window, observing that the plane began to crack, noticed a can of water and drank it to calm down. The plane was torn in half, but they were fine. Ava reassured them that they could still go home, as long as they avoided making hasty moves. Ava takes the lead in planning their actions, offering to share the diving gas tank until they reach the surface. Emphasize that there is no hesitation. After receiving the answer, they heard another noise and felt the plane moving. McCarty begged Ava to take care of her niece, saying that she would do everything for her granddaughter, and agreed. So Martin told Josa to remind her of her visits to the zoo, where she always wanted her grandfather to stand in front while she stood behind. Mark went to explain to Rosa that her grandfather had always watched her in the form of a Rosa's spirit with tears in his eyes, agreed, and massaged Ava to tell the bride to pull the string. If they see the shark, and ask them to wear goggles before leaving. McCarthy expresses that she is proud of the Ava depth and the Ava that dives down to create air bubbles when they successfully encounter the shark, scaring it away. Meanwhile, Danilo and Kai also follow, but Maktai decides to stay on the plane. She whispered to her husband. She told him to bless the vegetables to overcome this challenge. Kai didn't see Marti behind him and decided to go back to find her, but unfortunately, the shark dragged him away, leaving Danilo with no choice but to leave. Meanwhile, Ava and Rosa continue swimming, eventually finding the oxygen tank from the dead diver. They took oxygen cylinders to breathe, and Danilo was also due. And asked about the rest, but she understood when she noticed the Danilo alone and shook her head. They exchanged oxygen and removed the oxygen tank from the dead diver, prepared to swim to the surface of the Ava, pulled the leash with the Farbuck and Danilo to help them to the surface. When she reached the surface, Eva saw a shark and promptly escaped. However, the plane continued to crash, causing Eva to fall, and she struggled to swim up because she was so exhausted that she lost consciousness. Fortunately, her life jacket brought her back to the surface when she regained consciousness. She searches deep in Danilo, but only finds the little teddy bear of the distant strawberry floating. When the helicopter arrives, they throw a rope for Ava to pull her up. She breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Danilo and vegetables away from the soldier, asking Ava, "Is there anyone left?" But Ian shook his head. Long ago mentioned her grandmother. But Ava shook her head, and the vegetables hugged her in tears. And handed the teddy bear back to the vegetables. But deep down, said that her grandfather's advice was that the teddy bear had to be with her in difficult times. She believes she no longer needs it, so she decided to return it to the sea.